Horror movies usually like to give audiences a quick scare or start laying down the dread early on. But that doesn't mean every film gets it right, and some, for both intentional reasons and not, leave a first impression that starts things out on the wrong foot. I'm Josh from What Culture Horror, and we're talking today about the horror movies that pissed you off straight away. First up, a classic, Blade Trinity. Blade Trinity is a bad movie, but it didn't have to be an insulting one. However, from early in the first act, it's clear that this trilogy capper is not only going to be a step down from the previous two movies, but also try its best to ruin characters and storylines from those other flicks. Case in point, Whistler, the charming, grumpy old badass who helps Blade on his vampire killing mission. The franchise killed him off midway through the first movie to great effect, and then made the bold decision to bring him back by turning him into a vampire that would eventually get cured for the second. It was a risky move, but it paid off, with Blade and Whistler's odd couple chemistry proving too infectious to lose. Until Trinity anyway, which again decided to push Whistler out of the story and kill him for the second time to make way for Blade's new, younger sidekicks. Rather than giving him a fitting final end, however, the writers just treat Whistler more like an inconvenience, getting him out of the way so they can focus on the characters they actually like. It's a disappointing end for such an important character. Speaking of getting things out the way, next up we have Resident Evil: The Final Chapter. I, personally, might never get over Resident Evil: The Final Chapter for as long as I live, no matter how many times they reboot this franchise. That's because following the end of Retribution, the penultimate chapter in Paul W.S. Anderson's Resident Evil tenure, the final chapter promised to deliver on its killer cliffhanger. The end of that movie saw heroine Alice gain her superpowers back from arch-villain Albert Wesker, who switches sides to join her and a bunch of beloved characters from the game, including Leon S. Kennedy, in a last stand to save what's left of humanity. It promised a lot, a huge battle in the fortifications of the White House of all places, former enemies side by side, and a bigger focus on game characters. When it came time to pay off this setup in the final chapter, however, the filmmakers instead decided to just sweep it all under the rug. Picking up in the immediate aftermath of the White House battle, the sequel quickly establishes that everyone apart from Alice and Wesker were killed off screen. Wesker actually is still evil and has betrayed her, and Alice now needs to hunt him down. The complete 180 is bad enough, but for it all to happen off screen between movies, alongside the deaths of iconic characters no less, is just an indicator of how bad this final chapter is going to be. Next up, It Chapter 2. Okay, bear with me on this one. It Chapter 2 opens with a truly nasty tone setter, following two characters enjoying their time at a fun fair in Derry. The night turns sour, however, when the pair have homophobic abuse hurled at them by a gang of thugs who catch up to them on their walk home. It doesn't take long before the words turn into actions, and the pair are pinned down as one is ruthlessly beaten and then thrown over a bridge and into a river. After the thugs run away, the man still on the bridge tries to rescue his partner from the rapids before having to watch him wash ashore and then be eaten by the film's villain, Pennywise. Now, starting off with a distressing hate crime is certainly a bold choice, but this is horror after all, and the issue here isn't necessarily that it presents us with a nasty scene. It's that It Chapter 2's tone is so wildly all over the place that it never quite manages to make this opening scene, and others like it in the movie, feel earned or all that purposeful. It Chapter 2 fluctuates between wanting to show and take seriously the evil rot at the heart of Derry, while also making us laugh at it and at the character's expense, with wildly out-of-nowhere comedy punchlines, like having an Angel of the Morning needle drop. In better hands, this blending of tones could have worked well, but here it feels haphazard, and nothing sums it up more than that opening scene. Next up, Saw X. Saw X brought Tobin Bell's John Kramer back again for a Saw prequel that allows us a full film from the Jigsaw Killer's perspective without the need for the flashbacks and retconning that the original films became known for. Now, whether you've seen this film or not, and if you haven't, I do recommend it, it kinda kicks ass. If you know anything about Saw X, you probably know about the eye vacuum trap. I mean, how could you not when it was prominently featured in the trailers and on the film's posters? You know the one, the man sitting screaming with two tubes over his eyes attached to some kind of super Hoover machine. This is the image, and indeed the scene, that the film was effectively sold on, and yet it kind of doesn't happen in the finished flick. That's because it's not a real trap. It's merely a figment of John Kramer's imagination that he fantasizes about at the beginning of the film while in hospital when he considers punishing an orderly who almost steals from their unconscious patient. It's a shame because it's the best and most imaginative trap in quite a long time, but is blown right at the beginning and then followed by a series of far more mundane traps, which are either way less inventive or just a little bit clunky in their application. If you're gonna do such a monumental fake out, then at least don't do it with your main trap. Next up, we have Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. Like many of the classic slashers, the Friday the 13th franchise enjoyed a rocky and improbable life on screen, where soap opera rules apply to continuity and character deaths, but ultimately its worst deed was in the film that should never have been, Part 6, Jason Lives. Now, Tommy Jarvis successfully killed series antagonist Jason as a child in the appropriately titled The Final Chapter, and yet after one whole film without the man in the mask, that being A New Beginning, the creative team felt that they needed to bring Jason back to sustain the series going forward. So yes, we knew a film called Jason Lives was not exactly going to exclude its titular character, but it's the very fact that they have the guy who killed him, Tommy, bring him back that gets our goat. Tommy exhumes Jason's corpse in the film, then impales it with a big metal rod during a lightning storm, and voila, the guy is back up and running with one of the biggest horror mistakes put to film. Next up, Terrifier 3. The Terrifier series has come a long way since the original Art the Clown shorts, all the way to mainstream cinema, in fact, with the filmmakers building out the Terrifier narrative without compromising on the level of messed up antics and gore that fans expect to see. The biggest installment to date, Terrifier 3, puts David Howard Thornton's art back in Sienna Shaw's life in a big way, bringing along his ex-victim Victoria Hayes for the grim, gory Christmas massacre. But while previous entries have taken their time building up to the biggest and most brutal kills, 3 really tested audiences from the get. That's because the film opens on what appears to be the night before Christmas, and is shown from the perspective of a sweet little girl who has woken up and come down to find Santa Claus in her living room. Unfortunately, this Santa Claus is covered in clown makeup and is wielding an axe. And what follows is 5 minutes of pure, undiluted horror, in which Art takes the family apart piece by piece, including the girl's brother dismembered in his bed. Some audiences threw up, others left, and all found this an especially aggrieving part of a thoroughly aggrieving film. To that I add though, come on, this is Terrifier, what did you expect? Next up, Halloween 2007. Look, we love Rob Zombie, we really do, and yet few people have done more to casually tarnish the good name of horror in the past 2.5 decades than he. Zombies, a totally unwarranted Halloween remake, ditched all previous chronology for another crack at John Carpenter's 1978 original, updating it to a modern setting and sending Michael Myers on a bloody tour of Haddonfield once again that had loads of blood, but none of the previous film's suspense. And the issues with the story start right at the beginning. Rather than opening this film on child Michael murdering his sister on Halloween, Zombie takes his time, giving us a sizable introduction to a blonde-haired, baby-faced Michael, his home life, and his school life. He successfully rationalizes all of Myers' actions and somewhat successfully humanizes him before moving on to the kills, this time many and mostly as an act of spite. But for certain fans of the franchise, having such an elaborate backstory kinda missed the point of Halloween altogether. And now for a pretty funny one, in my opinion, we have Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. Tim Burton used to love nothing more than to dress Johnny Depp up, slap a bit of makeup on him, and turn him loose on his weird and wacky fantasy worlds. And before audiences got a little bit sick of this act, the pair with the big headline for Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street, a feature adaptation of the story that everyone knows so well. It's simple really, Sweeney Todd rocks up in London, opens a barber's, and begins bumping off his customers, cutting their throats with his razor and then sending them to the adjoining shop, where they're then baked into a nice savory pie and sold to an insatiable public. There's only one hitch. Nobody told us that there would be song. That's because Sweeney Todd was marketed as a straight, if flamboyantly Burton, horror film. So many audience members were surprised when the soon-to-be barber starts singing right as the film opens. Arriving in London alongside a young sailor, Anthony Hope, the pair burst into No Place Like London, and the tone of the entire piece and our horror expectations are flipped on their head. And it might surprise you, but some unsuspecting viewers are still taken in by this ruse today. Next, we're talking about Antichrist. Lars von Trier has never made exactly what you'd call a regular film, and yet Antichrist stands out from his filmography as being especially tough to digest. In it, we're brought into the lives of a married couple, played by Willem Dafoe and Charlotte Gainsbourg, who struggle with grief following the death of their infant son and abscond to a cabin in the woods for what turns out to be less of a wellness retreat and more of a grueling trial of violence, underpinned by graphic imagery and increasingly hallucinogenic visuals. So yeah, not exactly a popcorn muncher. But even this already extreme premise is taken to the ultimate extreme by having the child die in a scene at the beginning of the film. Shot in a grand operatic black and white, we're shown the full hardcore images of the couple shagging in one room, juxtaposed against the progress of their child in another who, having been left alone, climbs out of the apartment window and then falls to his death on the ground below. Yes, killing an infant in the opening scene is very on brand for Lars von Trier, but it doesn't sit well with pretty much anybody watching, and nor should it. And finally, we have the ultimate movie that pissed us off for all of the wrong reasons, Alien 3. David Fincher always had a tough act to follow when making Alien 3, arriving after Ridley Scott and James Cameron into an established franchise, and as a first-time director no less. The cards were already stacked against him, and that's even without counting the studio's relentless meddling. However, picking up where Aliens left off, Fincher immediately dispatches two of that film's three survivors, Hicks, played by Michael Biehn, and Newt, played by Rebecca Jordan, right during the opening credits. Now, partly this was because Fincher wanted to make the film his own, but really, it was because Jordan had refused to return, and it had been so many years with so many different scripts that Michael Biehn was also harder to get, not that the studio really tried. In any case, this decision scrubbed all the goodwill of the previous film and left fans who were rooting for the ragtag loose family of Ripley, Hicks, and Newt high and dry. After they had just gone to great lengths to survive and escape the Xenomorphs one movie prior, it was totally undercut by their deaths in transit. No dialogue, no screen time, no chance. And yeah, we're still all raging about it today.